So I know it's weird for someone to come out and say that a top 10 picks tape is a pleasant surprise. But for those that have followed my thoughts on CJ Stroud up until this point, I guess I would say I haven't been the biggest endorser of CJ Stroud, the prospect. I also wouldn't say I've been the biggest hater either, but I just haven't really been captivated by his game and seen this remarkable quarterback prospect that's been getting all of this hype for 2 years. And I'm just going to be completely transparent on this one. Before I sat down to finish the last 5 games of his season, to finish his evaluation, and then to ultimately make this video, I really anticipated that I would be putting an emphasis on his weaknesses and really talking about how much of a limited upside CJ Stroud has as a prospect. And I even had a thumbnail that read meh behind CJ Stroud. But the more and more time I spent with his film, the further away I got from wanting to paint that picture on who he is as a prospect. Now, he certainly has flaws as a passer. And in this video, I'm going to talk about those flaws and why they might hold him back from becoming an elite quarterback. But there really is a lot to like about CJ Stroud, and I wanted to do that justice here in this video. And honestly, just not wanting to force a narrative that just didn't match the tape here. So I'm really excited for this one. Before we do get started, if you could do me a huge favor, please take a second to hit that like button down below. It really does help me out. It tells YouTube that you enjoyed the content and that other NFL fans might as well. So it takes just a second. It's a free and easy way to support my channel. Also, make sure you're subscribed. Our next video, I think, is going to be the top 10 quarterbacks, so you can see where Stroud ultimately stacks up in this class. So one thing I've talked about in the past is about a quote from Bruce Arians' book, The Quarterback Whisperer, where Bruce talks about the importance of a quarterback being a passer and not being a thrower. In Bruce's words, a thrower is good at getting the ball to the receiver once he sees that he is open, whereas a passer is able to read the matchup, the coverage, the leverage of the receiver, often all at the same time, to anticipate that a receiver will become open. This is often described as the major difference between the college game and the pro game. And let's just be completely honest and get this out of the way. This takes on an even stronger meaning when we're talking about an Ohio State offense that, without trying to trigger the angry Buckeyes mob here, historically just simply allows the quarterback to operate at a slower pace and a lower degree of difficulty because of how good the protection is and how dominant the receivers are. Forget the helmet for a second. It's just a matter of fact that wherever Stroud ends up in the NFL, I can guarantee that he'll have less time to throw and less open space available for the receivers that he'll be targeting. So knowing if he's going to be able to consistently anticipate throwing windows opening up at the next level is going to be a major part of whether or not he's going to succeed. Now, you know how I said in the intro that my original plan was to talk about areas of Stroud's game where he's just super inconsistent? Well, what happened was I finished his season and sat down to really finish his eval. And this ability to throw with anticipation from the pocket went from a potential weakness, or at least an area of inconsistency, to what I now feel like is a relative strength of CJ Stroud's game. I really felt like as the season went on, he got better and better in this department, because he did have some of these moments early on where I was concerned about him throwing with anticipation. Take his week 1 game against Notre Dame, for example. Ohio State's just running classic mesh here, and the defense gets completely preoccupied with those intermediate routes, leaving the shallow cross wide open. But here you can see that Stroud hesitates and is late on this throw. Here is the perfect example of being a thrower by Bruce Arians' definition and not being a passer, where if he were a passer here, he would have gotten this ball out on time, where he could have hit his receiver in stride and is probably off to the races for a touchdown. He had the exact same problem here the next week against Arkansas State, of all teams, where it's the exact same read, the same play call, and you get the same indecisiveness and a similar result. But the thing is I started putting these clips together, trying to make this video, and as the season went on, I started to just be really impressed by just how many remarkable throws that Stroud had to make in these intermediate zone windows. All throws that I'm showing you right now. And I also realized that those missed opportunities started to come less and less and less. These throws speak for themselves. And there's enough of them for me to believe that CJ Stroud is going to be able to consistently attack the middle of the field in that soft spot of the defense behind the linebacker and underneath the safety, and attack those areas of the field with accuracy, touch, and anticipation. And not every quarterback is comfortable attacking this part of the field, because while this is the most efficient part of the field to throw into, and NFL teams are calling this the money zone, where this is what analytics says is the part of the field that you should design your passing game to attack, but it's also the most dangerous part of the field, with linebackers lurking underneath and safeties over the top ready to pounce on any late or inaccurate throw. And I think this is a part of, like, maybe, say, Zach Wilson's game that he's really struggled with getting used to attacking in the NFL. And I think Stroud isn't going to have that particular issue. Now, I'm not going to act like he never missed a throwing window or wasn't occasionally late on a hitch route or didn't see something come open, but what I realized was just how much the good outweighed the bad in this department. And I also loved some of the in-game learning that we saw from Stroud. Let's take this series of plays from the same drive against Wisconsin in Week 4. Again, pretty early in the season, where most of my notes of him lacking anticipation showed up. So the first play here is good scouting by Ohio State. They saw that Wisconsin typically doesn't match their curl flats in cover 3, which can really vacate the seam. And here, Ohio State is hoping to get cover 3 and attack that aforementioned soft area in the zone with a shallow post from the tight end, in hopes that that curl flat doesn't match number 2 from the seam. Stroud does a good job here to look off the safety to confirm the coverage, just as you'd like to see from any pro quarterback. But where he goes wrong here is he takes an unnecessary hitch. He waits a second longer to throw than he needs to, and ultimately, this almost gets his tight end killed by throwing late over the middle. And he's lucky that the tight end held on to this catch. Now, later in the exact same drive, Ohio State dials up a super similar vertical route combination in hopes that the seam comes open behind the curl flat defender yet again, and indeed, they get the exact same look. Stroud does the exact same job of looking off the safety, drawing him to the field side of the play, snaps his head back around to the boundary side, but this time, he gets the ball out quick without that extra hitch. Now, sure, the throw is a bit off. I think the tight end was expecting the ball a little bit more underneath the safety, and Stroud leaves it upfield. And I think both of these plays are small examples of some minor footwork improvements that Stroud could make. But that's all pretty nitpicky. I mean, all in all, these are the sort of learning moments that I just love to see from a young quarterback. I think it shows an awareness from Stroud. And in this case, it's like he doesn't even need coaching necessarily, because this is on the same drive. He realizes he was late earlier in the drive, gets the same look, and speeds it up. I just love that shit, and it's really encouraging when I see that kind of stuff from Stroud. I also saw in-season learning in his ability to specifically better attack tight man coverage. This is something, by the way, that I still don't think he's great at, because he just didn't see a lot of it. Most teams straight up didn't have the balls to run man coverage against Ohio State's receivers, so at times, I think Stroud could get a bit locked up on the rare occasion that his receivers were actually covered up man-to-man, and he wasn't always willing to test that tight man coverage. And that's something he'll certainly have to develop at in getting more comfortable doing at the next level. But anyway, let's circle back to Week 1 against Notre Dame. Again, believe it or not, we have mesh. This time, the back is running the wheel route. And that wheel route is a great answer against man coverage, especially in this matchup, where that edge player now has to cover the running back deep, and I would bet is supposed to be CJ Stroud's first read on this play if they get man-to-man. And Stroud doesn't even process this straight up. He looks right at it, but doesn't anticipate the matchup or make the throw that he has shown on tape that he can make. He is fully capable of leading the back here upfield. With a good enough ball here, could be a potential touchdown. Now, I know this is asking a lot because at the moment he looks covered and the pressure gets in here. But it is telling to me that he looks right off of this read and he doesn't even really think about throwing it here in week 1. And just hear me out here because I know this throw looks tough, but let's compare it to this next play 7 weeks later where he makes almost that exact same throw, which is really exciting for me from a growth perspective. So here, it's not the exact same concept. This isn't mesh, and this isn't even true man-to-man. This is cover 3 seam that kind of turns into man-to-man on that side of the field. But this is a double post wheel concept, and it looks a little bit more like a numbers go route from the number 2 wide receiver here instead of a traditional wheel. But either way, this turns into man coverage. They get the clear out from that backside post, and you essentially have man-to-man, which is exactly what Ohio State wants with the number 2 wide receiver and the slot corner. So very similarly to that last play against Notre Dame, Stroud needs to read this out, read the leverage of the receiver, and anticipate that he will win that matchup. Likewise, this is his first read. It is not open right away. And just like we saw against Notre Dame, he has to read the leverage of the defender, the receiver, and anticipate that the receiver will get there, and he has to drop an absolute dime if he's going to fit this in. But this is the type of stuff that CJ Stroud is capable of. He makes this throw here. And if he can consistently make these throws at the next level, that's going to help him set himself apart. And again, this in-season growth is just evident here to me, and it's really encouraging if you want to talk about a young quarterback who's still going to have to get better at the next level, just as they all are. So ultimately, I walked away feeling much more confident that CJ Stroud is, by Bruce Arians' definition, a passer who can and will make tough decisions with the ball with anticipation. And beyond the whole anticipation thing, Stroud is just much better at reading coverages, playing on time from the pocket within the structure of the offense, and he also doesn't get the same knock that I and many had on, say, Justin Fields coming out of Ohio State for being a first-read quarterback. With Fields, it was 5 or 6 times on the whole season when we found him not staring down his first read and actually working through his progressions, whereas Stroud might do that as many times in a single game. Stroud also understands that it isn't healthy to hold on to the ball forever. With a much more pro-ready 2.8 career seconds to throw compared to Justin Fields' 3.14. Now, is Stroud a perfect decision maker? No. There are certainly a few reads that feel predetermined, not reacting to the coverage post-snap, or just straight up not seeing linebackers underneath. But in general, Stroud is above average for a college prospect in terms of both pre- and post-snap processing. He typically makes the right read, avoids staring down or forcing the ball into a first read that is covered, and is pretty solid at working through his progressions to read the entire field in the way that NFL teams will want him to do. And then you pair that with the fact that his accuracy is great. That's when we really get the feeling that we're looking at a really high floor player here. I mean, just look at some of these throws. The way he drops these throws deep down the field in particular reminds me so much of Russell Wilson's legendary moon balls. This fade in the Rose Bowl in 2021 to Jackson Smith-Njigba in particular, you can just picture this being Russell Wilson to Tyler Lockett in their glory days. And another player he reminds me a ton of as a passer is Jared Goff. I've always said, going back to when he was still with the Rams, that Goff's arm talent and ability to drop dimes deep down the field when he's given a clean platform to throw from is severely underrated. We saw that come out in that legendary Monday Night Football game against the Vikings, for those that can remember that game. And we saw some of that this year in Detroit, where he's playing some of his best ball. And the reason I bring up Goff is not just the similarities in throwing style and overall arm talent for that matter, but I really think this is a good projection for what Stroud can and will be as a passer at the next level. As much as I'm hyping up Stroud right now, I'd be lying if I said he never overthrew a pass, missed a read, or had a poor decision with the football, because he certainly does, and that all boils into the evaluation. And to keep things honest, with the protection he received at Ohio State, paired with the receivers that he had to throw to, I'd be lying if I didn't think that some of the mistakes he did make on film are going to show up at least a little bit more often at the next level. And we've seen similar inconsistencies and dependency on surrounding talent from Jared Goff throughout his career. But we've also seen him go to a Super Bowl and play like a fringe top 10 quarterback in the perfect situation. I have a similar projection for Stroud's upside strictly as a pocket passer in the NFL. Before we go any further here, I do want to let you guys know, if you enjoy my draft content and you want even more of it, check out my Patreon. That is patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy, where you can get exclusive TFG draft content. We have film breakdowns right now on several quarterbacks. We will have team-specific 7-round mock drafts for all 32 teams in April, and you will get access to my complete draft rankings with full player profiles on every player in this class. Should be north of 350 players fully evaluated and graded and ranked come April. So that is patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. If you want exclusive content and you want to show your support for my channel, that's where to go. That's how to do it. Thanks for checking it out, and let's get back to the video. Now, the one nice thing that Stroud has that, say, Jared Goff doesn't have is better athletic tools to elude sacks, scramble, and make throws on the move. I'd say Goff has C- athleticism, whereas CJ Stroud is more of an NFL B or B- in athleticism. And what we saw from Stroud is that he isn't such a great athlete that he depends on his ability to scramble. He'd much rather make throws from the pocket. But on the rare occasion that he was pressured at Ohio State, he often was able to elude a sack and use his feet to either scramble or get outside the pocket, where he does a good job keeping his head up and looking to throw. And I would add that I don't think it's a coincidence that before the Georgia game, most people, myself included, were saying that Stroud doesn't always use his feet to extend plays enough. I think what Stroud has shown us, though, is that when he is pressured and he's able to actually see that pressure, he will react well and has the physical ability to extend those plays. So naturally, against Georgia, when his offensive line struggled much more than it ever did before, we got to see a much more dynamic version of CJ Stroud. And that actually made a ton of sense to me. Now, this takes me to my two biggest bugaboos on CJ Stroud. Two things that I think have a pretty good chance of limiting Stroud from becoming, say, an elite quarterback at the next level. Number one is his pocket presence. Yes, I just said that when he sees the rush, he has good reaction time, both mentally and physically, to elude sacks and extend plays. However, my definition of pocket presence is the quarterback's ability to sense pressure, to manipulate the pocket, and know when and how to use his feet to extend plays both in and outside the pocket. And in CJ Stroud's case, he might be able to sense pressure when it's there, but it's equally important, in my opinion, to be able to sense when pressure isn't there, as well as to be able to manipulate the pocket to buy time instead of always scrambling as soon as he feels pressured. And for those that have been around this channel for a few years now, this is the exact same criticism that I've been saying for years, specifically with two quarterbacks, Dak Prescott and Derek Carr. Both players, good quarterbacks, but players who haven't been able to take that next step towards being great or elite players. And I don't feel like ever will at this point. To me, what's missing with these guys is a calmness, an intangible comfort level in the pocket to understand not just the coverage and the read, but what the quarterback can do to open things up beyond the structure of the offense. And it's not just a mobility thing. Hell, one of Tom Brady's most elite traits is pocket presence by my definition. That ability to calmly navigate the pocket, navigate the rush, and buy time to open up third and fourth reads on a single play. And on top of that, while CJ Stroud, just like Dak or Derek Carr, are all good athletes who can use their feet to extend plays, they aren't doing the Joe Burrow stuff, the Aaron Rodgers stuff, the Patrick Mahomes stuff, and frankly, the Bryce Young stuff, where they're constantly navigating pressure, moving in the pocket, setting up blockers, and moving around until they can find that perfect pass in those scramble drill situations. And in my experience, this is just something that you either have or you don't. And I don't think CJ Stroud has that it factor about him. That's my best crack at explaining what an it factor is there for you guys. But I said I have two bugaboos with Stroud. And my second actually ties right into all of that it factor stuff in a way. And that's that while Stroud can extend plays with his feet and he has some excellent plays in these situations, he's much more erratic in these scramble drill situations where his decision-making out of structure is kind of all over the place. And I do think a lot of this ties back to what I said about him not having that natural awareness and poise as a passer. When the structure of the play breaks down, I see just a subtle element of panic in his game, or at least impatience in his game. When he starts improvising and the bullets start flying, this is where most of his mistakes and turnover-worthy plays come from. And he isn't like full-on Jameis or Carson Wentz where he's going to make a bunch of F-it YOLO ball throws all the time. But those type of throws do show up on tape occasionally. And he'll also throw balls that he just doesn't have in his arsenal. And this as well, in my experience evaluating players, is a trait that typically doesn't go away at the next level. So I think these two weaknesses in his game are things that can and very likely will eventually limit his upside in the NFL and potentially limit his consistency a little bit, just as we've seen with guys like Derek Carr and Dak Prescott, maybe make him a little bit more dependent on the structure of the offense being there. I'm not going to go full on saying he's a system quarterback or whatever, but you know what it is. I do find myself surprised with how high I find his floor to be, and that how comfortable I'd be taking him with a top 10 or even top 5 pick. Now, do I think in the right situation, either Will Levis or Anthony Richardson could end up better quarterbacks with higher upside? Yeah, absolutely. But if I told you you could have Jared Goff who can run with a 5-year rookie quarterback contract, I think there's like 20 NFL teams that would happily jump on that. And I feel pretty good saying that that is exactly what he's going to be. I'm just surprised at how safe of a quarterback prospect I feel CJ Stroud is. So there's your CJ Stroud film analysis. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Again, please do hit that like button if you enjoyed. It really helps me out. Takes just a second. If you're still here and you haven't hit it yet, what are you doing with your life? No, I'm just kidding. Also, check out my Patreon if you enjoy the draft content. Show your support for the channel. Get some more exclusive content. And yeah, that's all we got. We'll see you guys soon. I think our next video is going to be the top 10 quarterback rankings. So we'll get to see where CJ Stroud stacks up. Make sure you're subscribed. We'll see you then. Peace out.